Okay, good morning, good afternoon, and good evening from whichever part of the continent you are joining in. My name is Dr. Matilda Mghoi, consultant clinical psychologist, global master trainer, and executive member of ISSUP Kenya. I work at the Ministry of Health. Welcome to today's webinar entitled Climate-Related Disaster Nexus with Mental Illness, including Substance Use Disorder. The webinar is going to take 1 hour. 40 minutes will be for the presentation and 20 minutes for discussion. Please register your questions on the question box or chat box. We shall go through them after the presentation. This session will be recorded and posted after 2 days on the ISSUP website. Certificates will be sent to all who have actually registered and attended the training. I am very, very privileged to introduce our very able speaker for today's webinar, and this is none other than Dr. Pamela Kaithuru, consultant psychologist working at the Kenya Meteorological Department. Dr. Pamela Kaithuru is an executive member of ISSUP Kenya and has over 15 years training experience. So without much ado, I wish to usher in Dr. Pamela Kaithuru to give her presentation. Welcome.
Thank you, Dr. Matilda, for the welcome remarks. Thank you, participants from wherever you are across the globe. I'm here this opportunity to really discuss on this important topic, linking climate-related disasters to mental illnesses. I'm privileged and I thank God for the opportunity to lead this discussion. I'll go straight to the presentation. That is my outline, trying to look at, introduce the concepts, look at the situation as is, then create the link, and of course, recommend a way forward. I wish to welcome you once again, and let's enjoy this discussion. In terms of, as I set in, this presentation really cuts across various sectors, and it is targeted at all professionals that have a relationship with the Sustainable Development Goals, because they are so interlinked. As we try to describe or look at the climate-related disasters and how they likely are fueling the increase in mental illnesses that is witnessed more so in our region and globally according to studies. Hoping that at the end of this session that I'll be able to create this link, link the two concepts, and also encourage or point us to the importance of including mental health in interventions that are climate related, or as we respond to climate and climate change interventions in the globally. I take this opportunity to note that in 2015, globally there were developed the Sustainable Development Goals that were an action to actually try end poverty, protect life in the planet, and ensure that people live in harmony and there is prosperity. And this is to be achieved by ensuring sustainable development, or development that is really focusing on all aspects of life, socially, economically, environmentally, so that they are actually sustainable. And the Sustainable Development Goals that are 17 of them, cutting across the sectors, are interconnected. And this presentation will point to that clearly, especially the connection between the Sustainable Development Goal on health, that is SDG number 3, that is targeted at reducing the threats of health to the population, and more so looking at the heavy burden that HIV has occasioned and other infectious and diseases, as well as an inclusion now on the non-communicable diseases that are on the increase, as globally the world tries to ensure there is a universal health coverage for all, even as we end poverty and reduce inequalities that are experienced. And also the Sustainable Development Goal number 13 that has to do with the climate action. As globally, we look at creating resilience and adaptive capacities on the populations so that they can be able to deal with hazards and natural disasters. In this goal, there is the intention globally to improve or to create awareness to ensure that systems are strengthened, resources are mobilized, and all interventions are very inclusive, so that planning for climate-related disasters is actually inclusive across gender, so that then sustainable development is achieved by nations of the earth to make the planet more, better for everyone. Of course, I cannot be talking about climate change without allowing us to understand what is the differences between these. We have the weather, which is the day-to-day state of the atmosphere in terms of the wetness, the coldness, the wind, and the cloudness. That is on a daily basis, the now of the weather. There is also the term climate, which is the long-term observation, what has been observed and recorded over time in terms of temperatures, in terms of relative humidity, sunshine, and wind. And that defines the long-term observed weather of an area. Then what is climate change? Climate change then is the change that has been observed over a long period and an established kind of pattern in the climate of an area. And the long period is usually 30 years. And it is, as you see the quote there, climate change is simply the greatest challenge today that is facing humanity, and we cannot ignore dealing with issues climate change. So what causes climate change? Research has shown that mostly burning of fuels, fossil fuel, is contributing to the emission of greenhouse gases into the atmosphere. And of course, human activities. With industrialization, with the growth of population, there is a lot of release or emission of greenhouse gases to the atmosphere that is the main cause of climate change. And as it is not a problem of the future. It is already happening, and it's not getting better, especially if no action is taken. And that is the call today. What then leads to this change? Research or studies, especially for the people in the environment and climate scientists, they tell us that the emission of the greenhouse gases in the atmosphere, they are absorbed and therefore re-emitted back to the atmosphere or the Earth surface again, therefore creating some kind of blanket that creates the warmth that we experience, and therefore the rising temperatures or the energy that is released on the atmosphere, causing the warming. I thought it is important to bring this into our awareness. What is this warming. How does this blanket or the warming come to be? That is the greenhouse effect. Are there evidences really of this climate change that we are talking about? Yes, everywhere when you observe, evidences exist of that point really climate has changed. At the local scale, at the regional scale, at the global scale, there is a lot of evidences that are pointed to or point to a climate that has changed. When you look at the seasons, you look at the impacts in terms of frequency and intensity of disasters that are related to climate, that is including flooding, droughts, storms. There are too many evidences that are documented from one region to another, and they have been observed and documented over time. And if looking at what even opinion leaders, like you can see on the screen, are saying from the president of US, that we may deny, or some may still deny, the overwhelming evidence that really climate has changed, but we cannot ignore the devastating impact that all of us are experiencing. So we like it or not, it is happening and it is affecting humanity. In the region, the rising temperatures, the increase in the heat waves, even in the sub-Saharan region, is evidence that climate change has actually happened. When you look at reports from WMO that indicate some cities really have high temperatures that have warmed even by 2.2%. As you can see on the screen, towns like Khartoum with a rise in temperature of more than 2 degrees, and varies all the way, including in Kenya, in Nairobi, where there has been a record of 1.9 degree increase. Those are all evidences to really change has occurred. And this global warming has long-lasting effects. And if nothing is done, or if efforts are not put across sectors, then there is a threat of irreversible consequences unless we act. As the extreme events increase in terms of frequency and even intensity. And it is affecting even the seasons as we know them, so that you find a season is even shorter, and therefore influencing even the economic activities, especially for agri-based economies that like we see in the African continent. So the rise in temperatures leading to heat waves is posing a lot of risks. And of course, there is great loss to the biodiversity that all of us depend on, and therefore changes in the ecosystem. This has been recorded that there is a lot of economic loss that is related to climate-related disasters. When assessments are done, even by World Bank, it points out that $100 billion are lost to climate-related disasters. The impact of climate change really cannot be gainsaid. As I have said, increasing droughts, flooding, insect outbreak, like recently we had the locust invasion in our region, increasing it, and of course wildfires, declining water supplies, the agricultural yields, a lot of losses in terms of crops, in terms of livestock. The pollution in cities has increased. We find flooding, especially in coastal areas, and a lot of human-wildlife conflicts that are resultant to the dwindling resources, as it points to a changing climate. In terms of mental health, then, WHO reckons that the health of a human person is the complete wellness, both physically, mentally, and socially. So it is not only the absence of disease. That is according to WHO. In terms of mental health, it's about our emotional, psychological, and the social well-being. It is what do we think? What does that make us feel? And then how does it inform our behavior or action? It's about the ability of a person or even a society to be able to handle the stresses of life, because stress is normal to life. It will happen, it will be caused by many, there are many causes of stress, both for the individual and the society. But how are we able to handle the stresses of life? That determines our mental ability or mental status, knowing that mental health cuts across the age groups of across the stages of life from childhood to adulthood. It is not limited in age. And of course, when one is not well mentally or the mental health is challenged, then that is where we have mental disorders that have developed. And these are disorders or the conditions that affect how people think, the mood of the people, and therefore the behavior. And therefore, of course, the causes of mental health are many. They are a combination. I mean, they could range from biological to psychosocial to sociocultural and even environmental. And globally, WHO reckons that there are well over 450 million people who are suffering from one mental disorder or another. When we look at I look at my country, Kenya, in 2019, a report indicated that we were 9th globally in terms of prevalence of mental illnesses and 4th in Africa, which really points at challenging mental health in the community level. And knowing that the population of a country or the people of the country are the greatest resource that any nation could have to drive even the sustainable development we are talking about. When we look at a mental health issue like depression alone, the same studies showed that we had 1.9 million Kenyans who are living with depression, just one of the mental disorders. Globally, 10% of the population have one mental disorder or another. I have pointed that, and of course, appearing women have more, the prevalence is higher for women than men. And WHO also reckons that people with mental disorders have a likelihood of dying earlier, either by 10 to 20 years. So the more we have people having mental health illnesses, the more likely we lose them, and therefore affecting productivity really, because as it is, the people of a country are the producers that or the resource that the country needs to be able to move forward. So as it is, mental disorders are contributing to disability also globally. An emerging issue is the increase in suicides. And 60% of the suicides that are occurring have a base or have an underlying cause of depressive disorders, which are mental disorders, and of course, schizophrenia. Poverty is also creating a lot of stress. And when we look at climate, really, it is contributing to the increase in poverty in the communities. Therefore, can trigger development of a mental disorder or even exacerbate or worsen an existing mental disorder. The poverty that is related to even loss of livelihoods. And of course, we know there is a lot of stigma and discrimination in terms of mental illnesses, where you find either people are alienated or even a society or even a family that attend as, let's say, as a tendency of suicide occurring, you'll hear people saying, no, that family, they have a mental disorder that runs in that family. It is actually, it fuels stigma and discrimination, and of course, the emotional burden to the family and to the society in terms of dealing with a mental health issue and diversion of resources. Mental illnesses treatment is not like you take medicine and you quickly recover. They are chronic. So then if they are chronic, then it means it will take a lot of resources treating or managing. Therefore could also lead to loss of the economic power of a family and a society as well. What are some of the mental health disorders that we have? We have a lot of them, well over 200 mental disorders. We have mood disorders, we have anxiety disorders, personality disorders, eating disorders, trauma-related disorders, and of course, substance use disorders. There are so many mental health disorders, and of course, being able to correctly diagnose which mental disorder one is having is very, very critical, because then it determines the treatment or management of the mental disorder. What are some of the causes? I think I may have made a mention of this. It could be biological, where the chemicals in the body of the person are not balanced, therefore could be causing or underlying a mental illness. There is hereditary, where you find it's running in the family. Childhood experiences, the traumas that children may experience at the formative stages could lead to mental illnesses, and of course experiences that people experience along the process of, their lifespan. If one is experiencing a lot of trauma that is related to disasters, to loss, then it also could trigger a mental disorder. So abuse at childhood and trauma and neglect is one cause of mental disorders. Loneliness and isolation, where people feel they are not cared for. Of course, I've talked about exposure to disasters and conflicts. And today, with the increase in disasters that are even climate related then, and the conflicts of resources could trigger a lot of mental health illnesses. Living long with a physical illness. And today, when you look at, if you look at the increase in non-communicable diseases, it is a cause of a mental disorder. Unemployment and loss of livelihoods. It doesn't matter how the livelihoods are lost. And today, again, looking at the loss of livelihoods because of climate-related disasters. When somebody loses the whole of their crops, when they have invested on it because of a drought, when a flood comes and it destroys infrastructure and destroys homes, destroys property, what does that mean to this person? And of course, because of climate-related disasters or natural situations that people find themselves in, some people can even perceive themselves to be socially disadvantaged. How come we find ourselves in areas that are arid? Why are we here and not where the other people are able to produce better? Therefore, the poverty that people go through, they can perceive really they are disadvantaged, and that can trigger a mental illness. The loss and grief that is linked to loss of life and property, as well as severe and long-term stress or distress that could also be linked with the loss of life and livelihoods. All these are some of the causes of mental disorders. And when you look at the losses or at all these and see how climate could also cause them, therefore link it to possibility of triggering or worsening a mental illness. How then do we recognize mental disorders? I need to say here that it's important to know that there are experts that or professionals that are trained on how to recognize and to treat or manage mental disorders, just like we have professionals in other fields, including climate. Why is it important for a professional to do this? Because as you have seen, we have so many mental disorders. And unless a correct diagnosis is given, then the treatment or the management of that disorder will be may be done wrongly, and therefore the life of this person will not be made better. So professionals help to identify abnormal thoughts, abnormal feelings, and therefore also abnormal behavior that would indicate or be signs and symptoms of mental health disorders. And of course, we use the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual of Mental Disorders that classifies the existing mental disorders. How are you able to identify them, and what is the way they can be managed? And as professionals, we work not only with the psychologists, but also with the psychiatrists and other professionals to manage the health of an individual who is diagnosed with a mental disorder. And it is important to note that it's a wide spectrum of essential services that are needed, both preventive, promotive, treatment, rehabilitation, and even palliative care along the life course of an individual. What are the warning signs of a mental illness or a mental disorder? Excessive paranoia, worrying, anxiety for a long period. Somebody is worried, is sad, is irritable, extreme mood swings, where you find that one person, somebody is well overjoyed, another time they are so withdrawn and low in mood, social withdrawal, of course, altered eating patterns and even sleeping patterns. Either one is eating a lot or sleeping a lot or not eating at all, loss of appetite, loss of sleep. All these are indicators or signs that we can be able to point out even generally and say, I could be having a challenge, or this person could be having a challenge, so that then we are able to refer or for support. And the earlier a diagnosis is done, the better, because then if a condition is detected when it is mild, before it becomes moderate or severe, the management, of course, will be easier or better than if it is a severe mental condition. Let me go to an example where I will be able to link the two concepts then. I was looking at a report that was recently developed by the Kenya Food Security Steering Group, looking at the long range of 2021. And you see the country was mapped, and it was seen that really we have a lot of counties that are food insecure. Almost a half of the country is food insecure, as for this report of 2021. When I look at the forecast that was released by ICAP and then followed up by what was released by the National Meteorological and Hydrological Services. For those who don't know how the forecasts are released, like in our region, the IGAND region, the ICAP coordinates an outlook, a forum where they bring in all the scientists, all the stakeholders to look and model what are we expecting for this season. And this is what they did in the OND, or October-November season, that was forecast that was released the other day. We have MAM, which is March, April, May, and June and July, August seasons. So the regional scientists come together and forecast what will happen in the region. Then each nation goes down to downscale what has been looked at from a regional perspective, knowing that weather has no boundaries. You cannot limit what is happening in Africa to affect what is happening in Asia, or to affect what is happening in the other, from one country to another. That's the importance of actually all the scientists coming together and coming up with a forecast. Remember, it is a forecast, and it has to be used with a lot of caution for planning purposes. Why the caution? Because of course of the changes that happen, and that's why the scientists will tell you, you need not only work with the seasonal forecast, but always update with the monthly, the weekly, and the daily forecasts that are being issued. So once IGAN has sat with the professionals and have come up with this seasonal forecast for the region, then downscaling happens at the national level. And for our scenario in Kenya, when the national forecast or the outlook is done and the forecast is given, then we go down to the counties, those regions that we have 47 counties in Kenya. And the professionals there, the meteorologists in charge of that county and the other stakeholders come together to downscale that forecast so that then it can be able to inform interventions or activities at the county level, to be able to reach to the lowest level, or the lowest point of administration in the country. So when I look at the forecast like that was released on the 31st of August this year by the director, Kenya Meteorological Department, the director and the scientists were able to see we will be the season will basically be depressed. We will have below average normal performance in terms of rainfall, by distribution, in time and space. There will be incidences of storm and floods could occur, and of course the onset of rainfall will be delayed and the cessation will be early. What does this mean to the farmer or to the stakeholder who is a farmer that is dependent on this rain for them to have their economic activities? So if this is how it is for this season as forecast in the country, what does this mean? When you look at the map that is on the screen, it shows the temperatures. Basically, higher temperatures than normal were forecast within the October, November, December season by the Kenya Met Department. And with the forecast, the department goes ahead to issue the impacts. When we have released this forecast, what does it mean to the various sectors? And like the potential impacts for the OND 2021, where we have seen there will be a deficit. And of course, the department tells us this, we have had other seasons before this that didn't perform well. And we are already also focusing for a season that will not perform well. What are the likely situations that the populations in those regions will experience? And the department pointed out the drought conditions will actually worsen, especially in the arid and the semi-arid areas or sections of the country, mostly the northern region and the eastern region of Kenya. There will be drought, and therefore each sector, the department goes ahead to try and advise sectors like the disaster management sector. They are advised that there will be depressed rainfall. Yes, there will be lack of pasture, there will be lack of water for domestic and even for livestock. Therefore, advise the stakeholders in this area, which will mean that because of this lack of resources, conflicts will be there, likely be there, intercommunity as well as human-wildlife conflicts. What do these conflicts mean? What does the lack, I mean, the fact that we'll have insufficiency of food mean in terms of malnutrition for even people who are likely living with one health condition or another? They also give a likely impact to the health sector. There will be, emergence of some diseases that are related to water, and of course even respiratory diseases because of the weather that will be experienced in these areas. Therefore, because of scarcity of water, also water-related diseases would emerge. Therefore, leading to further complicating the issues for the people that live in those areas. So therefore, what is this link? What is this link that we can establish? When you look at the impacts or the effects of the impacts of the climate change, damage of infrastructure, loss of crops and livestock, likelihood of increase of diseases, life of course will, living conditions, the cost of living will go high. If there's scarcity of water, of course, electricity bills may go out. There will be blackouts, health conditions like allergies, food will get expensive, insufficiency of water. This person who is bombarded with this, generally you find mentally the person feels helpless. Others will get hungry because they are telling themselves, I've invested in agriculture. This is my livelihood. I've lost my crop. I'll lose. There's likelihood of losing the livestock. Anxiety sets in. People get irritable. No wonder the conflicts that we see. People will have a lot of pain and hopelessness. And therefore, this means the basic needs of these people are not being met. When you look at the Maslow hierarchy of need, a human being needs at least the basic needs: food, water, warmth, shelter. All these are basic needs that will likely be challenged by the fact that there's frequency of drought and of course storms and floods. Therefore, this person feels they are not safe. If they cannot provide the basic need, their safety is also compromised, and therefore the ability of even living in peace, feeling acceptable, being able to trust even the systems, where at times you find people blaming even the government or the institutions for what is happening. You see the life really getting a bit complicated, even almost losing meaning. And therefore, the mental illnesses that I am trying to point out, a lot of stress that could lead, you find that people have mood disorders, anxiety disorders, a lot of fear. Generally, the health of the people deteriorates, the mental health. Of course, it is not all gloom, because the governments are aware of what is happening, especially when you look at the sustainable development goals and the ones that are pointed out, goal number 3 and goal number 13. Countries are monitoring where are we in achieving these, what do we report. Therefore, milestones have been made. When we look at the Constitution of Kenya, in terms of the health of the people, every Kenyan has the right to highest attainable standard of health, which includes mental health. So our constitution assures us that, and that therefore informs the country to be able to put in strategies or policies. And that's why we have the Kenya Mental Health Action Plan that is supposed to drive to drive interventions that will, look out at the mental wellness of Kenyans by 2025. And also we have the Kenya Mental Health Policy that is 2015 to 20, that is still being implemented, that says it's towards attainment of highest standard of mental health for Kenyans. It is further downscaled, whereas the performance contracts of the cabinet secretaries and the CEOs of ministries, departments, and agencies have the policies cascaded down to their performance contracts, so that the performance contracts have to have an indicator to deal with the mental health of the employees, being an entry point actually to the community, because when the employees are taken care of, this will have a ripple effect to the families and the communities. Recently, we earned the mental health amendment bill being passed by our Senate, which is also a milestone for us, certainly. But of course, I will need to point out at the limitations or the challenges that we have. Demystifying mental health. It is not understood. People have known for long, or many people have known for long, physical illnesses. When you say somebody has a mental health disorder, what does that mean? We need to get a lot of awareness for people to be, for professionals to demystify what mental illnesses are. We need to deal with the stigma on mental illness and discrimination, where it doesn't matter. After all, it is not your choice that you developed this condition. You need not be stigmatized or discriminated. There is also the challenge of facilities that are dealing with the mental health issues, and also the number of professionals. If we look at the number of professionals available in the community that can deal with, are trained to deal with the mental illnesses, of course, they are also few. The uptake of services, mental health services, is also low. Where you find, even in hospitals, a recent report in Kenya showed that 40% of the people inpatient in hospitals are actually there for the wrong reason. It could be a mental disorder that has not been properly diagnosed. So they are in an inpatient dealing with a physical illness when it is actually a mental disorder that is not well managed. These are some of the limitations. I am sure there are many others that we can discuss and be able to point. But then what are the opportunities that we have? We are a community that is to some extent cohesive and connected. This is an opportunity for us to be able to reach out to one another, for us to be able to harness the skills, the resources that we have to deal with issues, mental health, and to support one another. It's an opportunity also for advocacy on mental illnesses. It's a new frontier that we need to fund, to resource for, to research, and also document, so that then policy is informed and therefore interventions can be done. As I bring this to a conclusion, I need to say that there is not one single solution to the issues, climate change, or even mental health illnesses. We need to look at it from a broad base, and more so in creating awareness and knowing that there are emerging perspectives. A few years back, we wouldn't look at the mental, at climate disasters and see how they relate, or they could trigger, or how they link with the mental illnesses. But I am sure at this time, you can be able to tell yourself, yes, this is really happening. And it is a new and emerging perspective that we need to be aware of, especially so when the WHO tells us we have to look at holistic health of the person. When we are giving the impacts of climate change, we give to the sectors, telling them that these are the impacts, and going also to include what does it mean to the mental wellness of the population. So integrating mental health issues in disaster response is very, very vital. Why? Because when you look at the causes and the effects, really you can see the causes, the effects, and also see the social impact. And increase in risk of diseases is one of the social impacts that are linked with the climate change. And therefore, we cannot ignore that connection or the nexus between climate-related disasters and mental health. Going forward, then, we have to be strategic as a global population so that then we integrate disaster risk measures. Whatever interventions we do, we need to be able to integrate them, and we need a strong socio-political will so that then we increase investments and utilize the existing technology for us to be able to intervene. So globally, we need to be ambitious in the approach to managing climate impacts, be inclusive, and consider the gender dimensions. When I talk of gender, I am not talking about male and female. I'm talking about also the roles and the responsibilities that different populations have. If you allow me to look at gender from a perspective of the responsibilities or the roles, what does it mean? What does climate change mean to a farmer, a crop farmer, a business person, a livestock farmer, somebody in the industry, in construction or in research? What does it mean? And I am hopeful that the upcoming COP26 that is supposed to be taking place in November in UK will be able to bring countries together to really make commitments and also look at issues climate from an broader picture and an interdisciplinary way, so that then we are able to intervene in a way that we look at the human population in all the aspects of the human being. And this, I cannot say it's better than the way the Secretary General of WMO recently said it when he was releasing a report. And I quote that he said, as the international community becomes increasingly aware of the interconnectedness between climate change and sustainable development, more interdisciplinary partnerships for change can happen, resulting in more sustainable behavior and consumption. It is hoped that this report that he was releasing actually can be able to form a better and a stronger commitment even to achieving the sustainable development goals and climate action, because the future depends on that. And I say, you see another quote there where I'm saying we have to fight climate change like we actually want to win this. And we cannot ignore a section or an area of humanity, and more so the area of health, even as we deal with the climate change disasters. And I wish to stop there and hope that I have been able to pass the message to us. Thank you for allowing me into your space. I appreciate, and I open for interaction. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Pamela Gadura. That was very, very informative. I've really learned a lot personally, and I hope all our participants have also learned something new that they can take to their place of work or at whichever operation that they are, whichever level of operation that they are in, so that they can be able actually to inform our policies in their different countries, including Kenya. So this is a question and answer time. We have at least 5 minutes for question and answer. I'm checking on my watch, and when I check at the question box, I've not seen any, unless somebody else is able to see any, but I've not seen any questions so far. Olivia, are you able to see any questions? Because personally, I'm not seeing any question from the question box.
No, not yet.
Okay.
Maybe check the chat as well, just in case.
Okay. Yes, there's a question at the chat box. I can read it for you, Dr. Pamela.
Yes. You see?
If there's a problem with your session, this is not actually contact global customer twist. No. It's not a question actually. It's just a comment. Someone was asking how they are able to join the session. So it's not a question. So I don't have any question, even in the chat box and in the question box.
We can allow maybe somebody to lift their hands then, to raise their hands and ask.
If any, yeah, sure. That is quite in order. If there anybody would like to answer a question, please, or a comment. Anybody with a question or a comment, you are welcome at this point. Yes, somebody has raised their hand. Please go ahead. The first person has raised their hand.
Unfortunately, attendees can't turn their camera or their microphone on when they join. So if people could type their questions, that would be great, please. Sorry, they
okay.
can't.
Okay, can you please type your questions?
I think there's a question in the
question
chat
box.
box.
There's a question in the chat box?
Yes.
Okay, yes, from Albert. It's asking what statistics are there on the impact of climate change on the prevalence of substance use disorders. I can repeat the question for you, Dr. Pamela. What statistics are there on the impact of climate change on the prevalence of substance use disorders?
Okay, thank you, Albert. Let me respond to that. You realize the focus of mental disorders in relation to disasters, even so the climate related disasters, is an area that is new. It's an emerging area, and that's why we need to be able to resource. If you remember my recommendation, we need to really do research so that we can be able to understand what is this connection and what is the prevalence. So in terms of prevalence as it is now, we don't have, I didn't come across a documentation that gives the prevalence of mental illnesses in relation to climate-related disasters. But this Sunday is a Sunday that I am undertaking, and I am sure in due time we'll be able to have even more people researching on the same. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Pamela. And then there's another question from Michael Barobi. She is asking, can you give an example of when climate-related disasters have occurred in Kenya and how that has led to an increase in substance use disorders? Is it clear, or should I repeat?
Kindly do repeat.
Okay. He's asking, can you give an example of when climate-related disasters have occurred in Kenya and how that has led to an increase to substance use disorders?
Okay. As I have pointed out, studies need to be done in this new area. But when you look at the fact that climate-related disasters are on the increase and the loss of livelihoods that is connected to this, the level of stress, increasing of stress levels, it could actually lead to people engaging in substance use to numb the pain, the anger, the fear that comes up along with the losses linked to climate-related disasters. Let's say, like now we are talking about droughts in the country. When a farmer hears drought and probably they have already taken a loan, prepared their farm, probably bought, restocked, hoping that there will be enough grass for their livestock, or hoping there will be enough rain for the crop, and suddenly a forecast is given, or a forecast is given of a period that says, no, this is not the situation. The likely scenario is the drought won't be there, you will encounter a loss. What does this mean to this person who feels hopeless? It could make this person resort to use of substance, and therefore or develop substance use disorders. And that's why I'm saying there is need to resort to research more on this connection. First was to establish the connection. Then we need to be able to research more on it, so that then we can say this is the prevalence, these are the mental disorders that are occasioned by disasters that are climate related. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Pamela. If there's no, I think there's no another question, and I think also our time is up. So at this juncture, I want to, yes?
Oh, sorry to interrupt. I think there might be a question in the questions box now.
Okay, let me check.
Wow. I can see a question by one Mr. Wachana.
Okay. Okay.
He is asking, he says, you have linked climate-related disasters with the mental disorders. Is it possible to co-produce climate services for mental illnesses management? Yes, it is possible. Since we have now established a link, it is possible for institutions to actually say this is a likely scenario, and therefore we get a product that addresses that area of impact. I think that is possible, Bwana Wachana, and I also appreciate the positive comment. Thank you.
There's also a comment from Susan Gitau saying an eye-opener webinar on the effect of climate change on communities and on mental health. Thank you so much, Dr. Susan Gitau. Then you also have another comment. Thank you, Dr. Pamela, for this good work. This is an eye-opener research from Zakaria Misiani. Thank you so much. Is there something else that I have not seen? Please, okay, good work. Well done from Esther. Wonderful presentation, great insight from Dr. Richard Gakunju. Well done, Esther Hazard. Great job, Esther, also. Anything else that I've missed, maybe? Yeah, this is from the question box.
I think that's everything. I can't see anything else at the moment.
Okay, great. Okay, and then thank you so much, Dr. Pamela, a very insightful presentation. I think it's an eye-opener for all of us. We learned something new. We didn't know that all this existed. And I want to thank you for all the participants also for attending this training. And as I've said, those who have registered successfully and they attended the training, they're going to get a certificate if they wish to. And I also want to thank the ISSUP Global for actually hosting this webinar. The next webinar is going to be in November 2021. So for those who are interested, please, you can join us during that time. Otherwise, thank you so much. God bless you. Wish to see you again.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye. Thank you. Thank you for listening.